So, what exactly is stacking the Yankee way? Stay tuned for a 3-part series where we discuss Yankee stacking strategies. It's going to be fun. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining part 1 of my stacking strategies, my financial journey. I want to have an open, frank, just casual discussion with you guys and talk to you a little bit about how I got to where I am. I was born and raised in a fiscally conservative home to parents who grew up poor themselves. My dad was absolutely poverty-stricken down south when he was a little guy, and he grew up and moved up north, became a Yankee, met my mom, who also came from a low middle class family herself. They had a very a dark perspective on money, and I grew up very concerned and cautious, very conservative. They saved for rainy days. They lived within their means. They paid their credit cards in full every month. They avoided bad debt. That was the type of family I grew up in. And as a kid, my exposure to precious metals came in the form of coin collecting with my dad and my mom's father, my grandfather. My grandfather loved to show me his coin collection and got me into collecting pennies and proof sets. These are some of the books that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. Maybe you grew up collecting them. I absolutely love digging through copper pennies and trying to find the right dates. This one I was very, very excited about when I finally completed it with the steel pennies, and oh man, binding is falling apart. But this was a lot of fun. And my grandfather taught me the enjoyment of digging through and searching for coins. And then every so often he would pull out a really special coin and show me. And then he'd tuck one in my pocket sometimes on the way home and said, "Here, why don't you start your own collection?" My dad, well, he got me going into stacking before it was even called stacking. He and I went to a local coin shop and we bought rolls of junk silver. He absolutely loved dimes. He thought that was the absolute perfect size. So he would get me going on Mercury dimes and Roosevelt dimes, but boy, his favorite was dimes. Occasionally we get quarters, but rolls and rolls and rolls. That's what he wanted to collect. This was my exposure to stacking at a very young age, and I loved it. Sometimes I would just pick up the dimes and hold them in my hand. This was the stuff that you could just play with, and I would feel it, and it would be so cool. I said, "This is real money, right, Dad?" Much of what I learned from my father and my grandfather set the stage for the way I handle finances and investments. I learned that there was good debt and there was bad debt. And most of it is bad. I worked and saved almost all my money for college throughout my teen years, and I skipped big purchases like a car until after I was out of college. During this time, I was introduced to the wonders of the stock market. Friends of our family wanted to help me out when I went to college. They bought me some stock. I remember the name. It was called Nuclear Pharmacy. This is pre-internet days, so I would go to the library, grab newspapers, and I would start looking through the stock pages and see where I was at. Was the stock going up? Was it going down? It was really fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. It went down. It lost value, and our friends sold it, but they gave me the full amount that they had originally invested for me to put towards college. I will never forget such generosity. So I learned you can lose money in the stock market. Tell me that isn't a good life lesson. Oh man. So I guess at that point, you could say my portfolio was bank savings, CDs, even a T-bill, I think. Yeah, a T-bill that I bought at the Treasury Building in downtown Boston. College loans were a necessity, but nothing like what's needed today. Our government-backed student loan program today is nuts. I mean, it's the reason college costs are through the roof. I was able to pay my loan off in full in 1 year with a lot of hard work, and I avoided all the interest, 100%. You can't do that today. and I got a job in IT. And soon after I started, I learned about this wonderful thing called a 401k retirement plan. Yeah, that sounded great. I could invest in stocks and bonds, and it sounded like a sure win. There was a guy that I worked with named Bob. He told me about Fidelity mutual funds. He got the newsletters. He would, put spreadsheets together, and he told me how he was going to retire when he was 40. Sounded great to me. So I decided to jump in. I bought some mutual funds, dollar cost averaged. Man, I went so far in, I had maxed out my allowable contributions by the time I was 27. But hey, I was a single guy, right? I had a really good job. I had avoided the crash of 87. I completely skipped the junk bond fiasco in 89. And the stock market was roaring in the 90s. Then came the internet bubble and the crash of 2000. But I did what you were supposed to do. I rode it out. And I had more stock market fun, this time all the way up to 2007. Right when the housing bubble popped and the Great Recession began. At that point, I got out of my stocks and my mutual funds and bonds right when it started to crash. It was just as it was going down. And I lost, some money, but not a whole lot. I was on the sidelines when everything really went to pot. But something big had changed this time. I became a contrarian investor, one who tends to invest in places that people are ignoring. At this point in my life, I was married, had 3 kids, and I had some money that I could put into something. I didn't know what. I had actually just changed jobs too. So I had left my 401k retirement account in cash reserves with my old employer. What was I going to invest in? I mean, I researched my options. I discussed my situation with a financial planner and with my wife, and I decided not to enter the markets. So instead, I considered real estate, and specifically thought about purchasing a duplex and renting it out, becoming a landlord. One of my colleagues at my new job told me, he was a landlord. He told me to go to this meeting of landlords in my state, and just see, what options there were for me there. So I went. But that night, they weren't talking about the landlord stuff. They had a guest speaker, a gentleman who was a rehab specialist and a flipper who owned a lot of property. This gentleman introduced me to something called private money lending. He had shown some of his properties, and the last thing he said, his pitch at the very end, was, if you have money that you would like to invest, I can give you a great return on investment, fully collateralized against real property, real assets. Ooh, I like the sound of real assets. You know what I'm talking about, right? But I'm a Yankee. I'm fiscally conservative, highly skeptical, always thinking someone's trying to scam me. I go slow. I'm really, really cautious. So I researched this guy. I checked his references. I called the Better Business Bureau. I called a broker that had worked with him. I read everything I could up on this guy and started interviewing other people just to find out what was going on. What was this all about? At the same time, I also read everything I could get my hands on about private money lending. I had to take a risk, a small one, a test deal. So I got a hold of him on the phone, and we discussed it some more, and I told him what I wanted to do. That was the beginning of establishing a consistent, highly secure income stream without the headaches of being a landlord and the volatility of the markets. The income I receive each month, part of it goes right here into precious metals, another tangible asset. Instead of rolling over my 401k into my new employer's plan, I did some investigation and found that there was another option, a self-directed IRA. What that allowed me to do is put my retirement money in vehicles other
than equities and bonds and mutual funds, paper money, if you will. And I just seized the opportunity. I moved my 401k in and started investing more into private money lending. I've probably belabored this too long, but if this sounds like a topic you would like me to go into more detail, please leave a comment at the end of this video. If I get enough people showing interest, I would be glad to go into it in more depth. And this would probably be the right time for me to give the standard caveat that I am not a financial planner. Everything I say here is my personal opinion. Talk to your own financial planner, do your own due diligence.
I also came back to the coin collecting of my youth, or more accurately called now precious metal stacking. My stacking tactics have changed some, yes, but Yankee Stacking is a significant and growing part of my investment insurance portfolio. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's for part 3 of my series. Next time on Yankee Stacking, part 2, my current economic perspective. Until then, I hope your day is A-OK.